Good morning, everybody. How are you all? Dr. Weed has come to do a presentation on Dr. Weed, a low-carb, high-fat diet and how well they work.
Thank you. Thank you all for moving forward and coming here this morning. I'm Dr. David Weed. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a psychologist. But I've been teaching people about low-carbohydrate diets for the last 5 years. And if you want to know more about this, I'll tell you at the end how you can go on the internet and see videos that I've done in the past and things of that sort. But I thought today would just be an opportunity just to briefly explain some of the main concepts about low-carbohydrate eating. Let me start by asking, does anybody here follow a low-carbohydrate diet now? Does anybody here have diabetes? Is anybody here concerned that they might get diabetes?
I got enough.
You got enough already. Okay. Well, I almost had diabetes, and then I learned how to keep from getting it through this kind of a diet. How about high blood pressure? Anybody have high blood pressure?
Yeah.
Okay. This can affect that. And how many people either have had cancer or know somebody who's had cancer? Okay. These are all things that can be affected by basically what is sugar in the blood. Okay. And we'll talk about that as we go along.
Do you inherit that from your parents?
You can inherit a tendency toward that, yes.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I've already told you I'm not a physician. And if you're on medication, before you make a big change in your diet, you need to talk with your doctor, okay? Particularly if you're taking insulin, okay, you may need to cut back on the amount so you don't have difficulties. So we've all been told cholesterol will lead to heart disease, right? You've all heard that? And that dietary fat, the fat that you eat, will cause heart disease. So you need to eat as little fat as possible. Anybody heard that before? Okay. It's all over the place. In the last 40 years, that's what we've been hearing. Okay. We've also been told that the only way to lose weight is by cutting fat out of your diet. Anybody ever been on a diet? Try to lose weight? Right. Yeah. Welcome to America. 4 out of 5 people are on diets. Okay. And if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic, you should lose weight by cutting fat out of your diet and exercising. Well, I would agree with the exercising, but everything else you've just heard me say, I don't agree with. Okay? And I'll tell you why.
What about if you have large bones? You're not fat, but the bones will heal up.
Okay.
That's right.
When we cut fat out of the diet, no matter what we do, we're always hungry. Okay? Anybody been hungry on a diet? Yeah. Yeah, it's mostly what happens when you cut out, particularly cut out fats out of your diet, you get hungry. Okay? And though you may, through willpower, keep from eating, in time, what happens after you're on a low-fat diet?
Give up.
You give up, and you put the weight right back on, sometimes even more, okay? The reason is that hunger always wins, okay? No matter what you do, okay? If you're hungry, I don't care what kind of diet you're on, eventually you will eat to replace the calories that you've lost, and the weight will come back on.
But you always eat what you like.
Well, eating what you like is important. And how many people just love low-fat foods? Low-fat yogurt, low-fat milk, okay? Do they taste just as good as the full-fat version? Okay.
That free milk has been on it for 15 years.
Okay. So they took the fat out, and what's left in the milk and the fat-free products? And what's often added to fat-free products? Not fat, but sugar, right? If you look at your milk and you compare the sugar in your low-fat or non-fat milk with full-fat milk, you'll see that it has fact, we put added sugar into low-fat milk in our schools for the school lunches for children because we know that they won't like the milk without the fat, and we add the sugar to make it taste better. In fact, most low-fat products, things you buy in the store, they're advertised lower fat, low fat, have added sugar. Is sugar good for us? Anybody want to say sugar is good for us? How much sugar do we need to have in our diet? How much?
Probably none.
Pardon me?
Better than that artificial sugar.
Oh, it's better than, yeah, I wouldn't recommend the artificial. But do we need sugar in our diet? Does anybody tell you you have to have sugar in your diet?
No.
You're not getting enough sugar. No, what are you told? What did we learn growing up? What did your mother tell you when you wanted to eat all the candy after Halloween?
You're gonna get sick.
Huh?
We were so poor, we couldn't eat.
You couldn't eat candy. Okay.
You're gonna get sick.
You're gonna get sick. Well, your mother was right. The problem is, the sickness you're gonna get, you're not gonna get for another 30 or 40 years, and that's called diabetes, okay? That sugar in the diet is not good. And in fact, our body is set up to get sugar out of our diet, out of our body, okay? We have an organ called the pancreas that secretes insulin. Anybody heard of insulin? Okay, we all have it, okay? Insulin is what its sole purpose is to get sugar out of our bloodstream that comes from food we eat and put it somewhere. Unfortunately, we can't excrete it, otherwise we wouldn't gain weight. But what happens to the sugar that we don't burn as energy or use as fuel to warm our bodies? Where does that sugar go?
Wait,
That's it. Thank you. Right. Either there. Mostly for men it goes here, for women it goes down here. Okay? But one way or another, that sugar has got to be parked somewhere. Your body, if it doesn't use it right away, it's going to have to put it away because it can't stay in your bloodstream. High levels of sugar in your bloodstream are toxic. And if you know anybody with diabetes, you ever heard of people who have diabetic retinopathy, where they lose their eyesight, or kidney problems, okay, or nerve problems in the fingers and feet, or even suffer from amputations, okay? That's because the amount of sugar in their blood remained too high for too long, okay? And we give people medications to bring the amount of sugar down artificially in their bloodstream. And one of those medications is insulin, and insulin's job is to get the sugar out of the blood. So where does the sugar go? It's called glucose in the blood. But where does that sugar go? Into our fat cells, okay? So our system is designed when we eat sugar that we don't need, we store it as fat, okay? Is it good to be overweight?
No.
Why not? What's bad about being overweight?
Affect the heart.
Bad for your heart? What?
nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong?
More love.
More to love. We've heard that, right? Unfortunately, when it's 40, 50, 80, 100, 200 pounds of love, we know that that's not good for people. It affects their joints, okay? And mainly increases the 3 metabolic diseases that are a problem for many people today. And that's high blood pressure, high blood sugar or diabetes, and high cholesterol, right? How many people think that having high cholesterol is good? Okay, right. You want to keep your cholesterol down, but if you're overweight, you're going to tend to have higher levels of cholesterol. So those are the 3 main reasons why being overweight is not good. So any sugar you eat and don't burn as exercise or fuel for your body to keep you warm in the wintertime is going to be parked in your cells as fat. That's just the way our bodies work. So the dietary advice we've been given is to avoid fatty foods. Anybody hear that? You know, why do we eat low-fat foods? I know we've all been told this. I've followed low-fat diets for years. I struggled with keeping weight off as I continued to gain weight. I used to drink soda all the time because there's no fat in that. Okay. So was doing was putting excessive amounts of sugar into my body, and I was gaining weight even though I was keeping my fat levels down. Okay? So that wasn't a good thing. All right? Getting daily exercise, is that a good thing?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Is that just so you'll lose weight, or are there other reasons to exercise? Bone health, yeah, cardiovascular health, okay, knee and joint health, okay. There are all kinds of good things, good reasons to exercise, and I would absolutely recommend. You have an exercise class here, okay? How many belong to that or go to that? Anybody here? Well, think about it. If you can't go to that, walk around the block, okay? Any exercise, any at all is good for you. You don't have to run a mile, okay? Just get moving, okay? It's very important. And eat your veggies. Are vegetables good for us?
Yes.
Why are vegetables good for us? A lot of vitamins, okay, and minerals, okay? And those are essential. Those are vitamins that you have to have or you'll get sick, okay? So half your plate now should be vegetables, right? Anybody here not like vegetables? I won't ask. I often ask, what's your favorite vegetable? I think most people, when I say eat your vegetables, 25% of people in this community, the only vegetable they eat is what?
Potato.
Well, close.
Potato.
Potatoes, right?
Green
French
beans.
fries.
Green beans.
Okay. And though technically potatoes are a vegetable, and they do have some vitamins, they have a lot of vitamin C, interestingly enough, they alone are not going to give you everything you need. So if you're only eating potatoes, that's your only vegetable, you might want to consider all the wonderful other vegetables, particularly broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, you name it. All those vegetables. Corn's kind of in the potato family in terms of being very full of starch.
I always thought sweet potatoes were better than.
Sweet potatoes are better than regular ones because they have more vitamins in them. But potatoes, in particular, okay, turn to sugar when you digest them. Actually, it starts happening in your mouth when you first eat a potato in any form. It'll eventually be turned into blood sugar or glucose in your system. And what did we say? If you don't exercise or burn it off or use it to fuel your body for heat, you don't need much. A few hundred calories a day is fine for that. Then it's going to get stored as fat. Anybody remember? I'm almost 70, but I know that doesn't mean a thing to many people in this room. What did we hear 50 years ago about losing weight? What foods were you supposed to cut out to lose weight?
Sweets.
Pardon me?
I didn't have to lose weight.
Pastries, what else?
Bread?
Bread, yeah. Bread, potatoes, and beer. Those are the three big ones. And in fact, there was a diet that was started in the 1870s in Germany that unfortunately, because of the war, we didn't hear much about after World War II. But that was what was called the Banting diet. People still in Europe say, I'm Banting, meaning they're dieting. Okay. What that diet said was cut out potatoes, beer, and bread.
I've never, but a lot of people, they have mashed potatoes, but they put milk and butter.
Yeah, well, I would agree with the butter and probably the milk, but I leave the potatoes. Okay. In Fall River, what's the typical meal, particularly if you're Portuguese? It has what?
Portuguese people eat
No, the three things on the plate. Always.
Portuguese
What?
made with kale, cabbage.
Bread, potatoes, and rice. All right? You ever had a meal with bread, potatoes, and rice?
Not the two together.
Oh, I see that all the time.
Potatoes and rice.
Potatoes and rice.
So many carbs.
Well, often potatoes in the form of French fries. But if you go to a Portuguese restaurant, that's what you get. You get French fries, rice, and bread. Okay? With every meal. Doesn't matter what you're ordering. Right? Well, are those three things sound suspiciously like what we were told not to eat 50 years ago? Of course they are. Do we have a problem with people being overweight and diabetic in this community?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, very high in both people being overweight or obese and people having diabetes. Okay, and if you think it's not the diet, then you tell me what it is. It certainly is not the fat in their diet. Does fat cause your blood sugar to go up? No. Okay, you can eat all the fat you want because it doesn't stimulate insulin from your pancreas. Okay? So when you eat fat, how do you feel after you've had a meal with lots of fat in it?
Sluggish.
Absolutely, right. And tired maybe, if you're already tired. But that feeling of fullness, or what we call satiety, is particular to fats in the diet. Okay? It takes about 3 hours to digest carbohydrates, bread, rice, potatoes. Okay? It takes about 6 to 8 hours to metabolize fats. Okay? Fats stay with you much longer. Anybody have eggs and bacon or sausage in the morning for breakfast like I do every morning? Of course not. You're told that's evil. You're going to die if you eat that, right? Absolutely, right? You should be eating bagels and corn chips and oatmeal and things of that sort, which, by the way, are all carbohydrates.
You eat a big breakfast like that every morning?
Every morning.
Really?
And my cholesterol has never been better. Okay? And you won't believe that until you try it. 2 weeks, you'll see. That's what happens. Okay? But because I have lots of fat in my diet at the beginning of the day, I'm not hungry. It'll be 2 o'clock before I start to think, well, maybe I ought to eat lunch. Okay? Because it's taking 6 to 8 hours for all those fats to digest. Meanwhile, it's not stimulating glucose storage or fat storage. If anything, what it does is stimulate my body to burn its own fat. What happens when we burn the fat that's already in our bodies? What happens? We lose weight, which is what people are trying to do when they go to low-fat diets. They're trying to lose weight, but they're eating all the things that increase weight, all those carbohydrates, and not eating the one thing that they could eat that would make them feel full and at the same time not make their bodies burn their own fat. So low-fat diets, when they've been researched, and there's been lots of research in the last 10 to 15 years, in nearly every single case, over 60 studies now, low-carbohydrate diets beat low-fat diets. Okay, people lose more weight and keep it off longer. I've been on a low-fat, low-carbohydrate diet for over 7 years. You can ask my wife. I have not had a piece of cake, a cookie, a potato chip, a regular bread sandwich, any of that for 7 years. And then people, my friends say, "Oh, you poor thing. You must be so deprived. You must really want that. Don't you miss it?" You know what the truth is? I haven't missed it for any time that entire time. I go to restaurants, parties, whatever, people are eating that stuff, and I go, what are they doing that for? It loses all appeal. When you drop the carbohydrates out of your diet, it's the same thing happens, very interestingly, with people who have bariatric surgery, who have their stomachs cut out. They'll tell you that within the next few days after the surgery, they suddenly lose all interest in that kind of food. We don't know exactly why, some brain change, but we know that when people eat cakes, cookies, carbohydrates, it stimulates serotonin in the brain, which is a pleasure sensation, and we all get mildly addicted to those foods. Okay? Ask somebody to give up their brownies or the cake or their ice cream, what do they tell you? I can't live without that, right? What they mean, good for you, what they mean is, I fear the feeling I get when I don't eat that stuff. Because when I do eat that stuff, it makes me feel good. And when I don't have it, I start to feel depressed. What does that sound like? If I take something and put it in my mouth and I feel good, but if I don't take that and put it in my mouth, I feel bad. Does that sound like anything else? Drugs? Okay? People who are on heroin, cocaine, etc. Okay? They put something in their body that makes them feel good, and if they don't have that after a while, they feel really equating eating carbohydrates with heroin, but experiments have shown that when rats are given a choice between eating sugar or cocaine, guess which they prefer?
Cocaine.
No,
Sugar?
sugar. Okay? Because it stimulates their brain better than the cocaine. Okay? We think that's nonsense. Oh, I don't have to eat a cookie all day or whatever. Yeah, so don't. And then don't eat anything else with carbohydrates, and do that for 2 weeks. You'll feel a little strange at first because your body will start shifting into fat burning mode when you start burning your own body fat and not the food that you eat. Okay? But after took me about 4 or 5 days, you start to feel very different. You get more energy, you feel better, and those sweets and cakes and cookies and things like that that you see around you suddenly aren't appealing anymore. It's weird. You have to do it to know it. Okay? And I guarantee you, if you do this faithfully for 2 weeks, and there's an article over there about how to do this. Okay? Number one, it won't hurt you unless you're on insulin or other diabetes medications. That's not because it's hurting you, it's because your medicine is now more than you need because you've cut your carbohydrates. So if you're going to do that diet, talk to your doctor and say, I'm going off carbohydrates for the next couple of weeks. Tell me how much medicine to take. And typically they'll cut it in half or so, maybe more. Okay? Because you don't need the medicine if you're not eating the carbohydrates. The reason that people with diabetes are taking medicine is because they need to cover the blood sugar that's in their body all the time from constantly eating carbohydrates. All right? About half of Americans seem to be able to tolerate carbohydrates pretty well. Okay? Half of Americans don't seem to have a problem. We don't know that for sure. We think some of them still develop high blood pressure, but they don't develop diabetes. The other half, okay, 52% of Americans are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. 1 out of 2. Okay? So there's a reason why this really needs to apply to a lot of people. But inheritance may be part of that reason. Some people seem to tolerate it better than others. I know I don't. If I have 2 slices of bread, I'll have more blood sugar as measured than if I ate a candy bar. Okay? Well, bread, like any other refined grain, things that are ground up into flour, quickly becomes sugar in your blood. Okay? That's what it gets converted to. Carbohydrates are, you know your chemistry, they're long chain molecules, okay? Whereas table sugar are short chain, okay? They're called simple. Okay, so it gets simple and complex. But the complex just break up into little simple sugars.
You're talking whole wheat or white bread.
Doesn't matter a whole lot. Okay? The difference with whole grains is that it'll take a little longer to digest, and you do get vitamins and minerals in them. That's good. Okay? But in the end, the amount of carbohydrates is about 95% of what you would get in refined grains. So if you're going to have bread, I definitely recommend that you eat whole grain bread rather than wait, tip-top Wonder Bread. Those things are terrible. That stuff is the flour is so finely ground that those flour particles turn into sugar almost instantly in your stomach. Okay? Actually, they start turning into sugar in your mouth. But whole grain is better. You're hearing me say a lot of things that you have not heard from anybody else. Am I right? Okay? Everybody that you talk to, your dietitian, your doctor, your kids, anybody you talk to, is going to say, fat is bad. Okay? The way to lose weight is to go on a low-fat diet. Okay? If you eat fat in your food, it'll end up clogging your arteries and you'll die of a heart attack. Right? All these things, okay? Well, I'm here to tell you that the science of this has been changing a lot. And if you pay attention, you'll see articles in the newspaper. Read my article tomorrow in the Herald News. Anybody get the Herald News here? Okay. You go to the Living Well section, okay?
Everywhere, I read everywhere.
Right. Read the Living Well section. I have a nice 2-page article in there all about this. And even more, if you're interested and you want to learn more, I have a free class every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock at the Cuss Middle School in the community room. Okay? That'll go on for 10 weeks. You don't have to pay a dime. I know it sort of seemed in the newspaper article today that you had to, that's the $10 is for the fitness challenge. You're going to work out, but you don't need to pay me for the classes. They're all free. They're a 1 hour class. And if you can't make one, that's fine. Just come the next week or whatever. They go on until middle of April or so. And there I'll teach you the whole thing. I'm just telling you little bits and pieces because we don't have a lot of time here, okay? But I'm just telling you some of the major things that have gone on. Anybody read the Herald News yesterday? I was in an article there. Did you see that?
I read it.
Okay. What did I say in that
Every
article?
single day. I can't remember what it said, but
Right.
remind me, I'll know.
Right. And I'll try to get some copies that you can pass around.
Okay.
But the message is really simple. That basically that what we've been told about nutrition for the last 40 years was based on flimsy research, and there are huge books all about that. Okay, some of the authors I know, and don't blame your doctor, don't blame your dietitian, and don't blame anybody else who says that what I'm saying is wrong, because they're just repeating what they've been told for the last 40 years. Okay, there's only a small number of people now who have been keeping up with this current research and understand that what I'm saying is based on solid science. Okay? I'm not a quack. I'm not making a dime on any of this. I'm somebody who discovered personally something that was happening in my body that made a difference and made the switch to a low carbohydrate diet and got excellent results. Lost nearly 20 pounds. My cholesterol levels went down, and most importantly, if anybody knows diabetes, there's something called an A1C level. Anybody hear of that? That's the standard test now for that. Well, my A1C 7 years ago was 6.3. If it were 6.5, my doctor would have been putting me on diabetes medications. Okay? There you go. 7.8, 8.9, 10. Okay. Anything above 6.5 is diabetes. Anything between 5.7 and 6.3 is called pre-diabetes. All that means is you're on your way. Okay. Blood sugar is in a continuum. Okay. It's not like suddenly you wake up someday and you have diabetes. And it's not a communicable disease. You can't catch it from somebody. But it comes from your body having difficulty adapting to the high carbohydrate diet that all Americans are exposed to every day. I'll wager that the lunch you're having today is full of carbohydrates. Am I wrong?
Homo.
Homo.
Well, we have garlic bread, but we have vegetable soup, minestrone soup.
Okay, minestrone. If I were eating minestrone soup with you today, I'd eat everything except the macaroni. Okay?
Yeah.
The carbs in it. The vegetables are fine. The broth is fine. Okay.
Garlic bread.
Garlic bread? Oh, right, because it tastes so good, doesn't it?
I
Right?
have no more bread.
You have no more?
I said, I can't have any more bread.
Well, and like I said, that's what I was saying earlier. I can't live without. Okay? I've got a brother-in-law who swears he can't live without eating bread every day. And I'm watching his weight go up, and I'm just waiting until he gets the news that he's diabetic. Okay? But, right. There are low-carb breads, by the way. I eat one, if I have to have a sandwich, I get something called Joseph's. I think that's it. Thank you. Right here. If you go to Stop and Shop, or all the stores sell it, you can get a low-carb wrap called Joseph's. Okay? Good for you. Okay? And it only has 8 carbohydrates. Standard slice of bread has anywhere from 12, 13 up to 20. Okay, so if you have a sandwich with 2 slices of bread, you're getting 40 carbohydrates a day. That's twice the carbohydrates I eat in a day. Okay, now you may not have to be that low in carbohydrates to get some benefit, but half of one of these is only 4. Okay, the difference between 4 and 20 is huge. Right? So you could just possibly eat bread. There are also recipes I'd recommend if you're curious about this. Go on the internet to dietdoctor.com, okay, and that's a great website.
Having diabetes,
Well, we think you inherit the tendency.
When we were young, we were
Yeah.
all so poor, we ate regular food. Nobody had diabetes.
Well, when you were young, people didn't have diabetes the way they do now because, remember, nobody was telling us not to eat fat. Before 1970, there was no recommendation to take fat out of your diet, okay, number one. And number two, people engage in more exercise, physical activity, right,
What
which
about
helps.
the people that eat bread and they put butter? Doesn't
I would
that
eat the butter and leave the bread, okay? Nothing wrong with butter, nothing wrong with
That's fat.
coconut oil, but if you have something like Raisin Bran, anybody eat Raisin Bran?
Yeah.
I did for years. Wonderful, good brand cereal, full of vitamins and stuff like that. Raisins, fruit, that's good for you, okay? Want to guess the number of carbohydrates in this container? I always have to look at it because I'm always shocked.
You get your glasses on.
Total carbs. Yeah. 68 grams of carbohydrates in this. It's almost like pure sugar, okay? Here's a health food, and it's inexpensive. And like oatmeal and other things like that that are full of carbohydrates, and you may tolerate them well. You may be that half of America that doesn't have a problem with this, and just keep an eye on your blood sugar, okay? But you may be fine. But if you're like me, you tend to put on weight easily, okay? Or if you have a family history of diabetes, or if the doctor's been telling you you're pre-diabetic, okay? I would take a serious look at low carbohydrate diets. If you're not pre-diabetic and you're otherwise healthy, there's nothing wrong with cutting carbohydrates out of your diet. And if you have high blood pressure, it may help. And two other diseases that have been associated with high amounts of carbohydrates in the diet. Anybody want to guess what they are? Two diseases that nobody here wants to have.
What?
Pardon me?
What is it?
Well, cancer. Anybody like cancer? Okay.
Depends
No.
what you eat.
Well, and that's what I'm saying there. It's not a one-to-one correspondence, but consider this. Cancer cells thrive on glucose, okay? Any cancer person will tell you that. They live on the blood sugar in your body. So if you're eating carbohydrates, you're feeding your cancer cells, is one way to think of it, okay? Now I'm not telling you that if you go to a low carbohydrate diet, you'll never get cancer, because there's some cancers that aren't affected in that same way. But if you do have cancers, there are many physicians now who are starting to treat people with what's called a ketogenic diet. It's an all-fat diet, no carbs, okay? Because they know it helps. The second illness that nobody here wants to have starts with A. Alzheimer's, right, or dementia, okay? Guess what Alzheimer's is called by one of the researchers over here at Brown University? Type 3 diabetes, okay? Not type 2, which is what we're talking about most of the time here. But type 3, meaning that there's a lot of evidence that Alzheimer's develops again in a high sugar, high carbohydrate environment. And we don't know exactly all the connections. And certainly, as you were saying earlier, some people are more susceptible than others. Okay, not everybody gets Alzheimer's. But those who do may benefit also by lowering carbohydrates. Okay, there are other things like gout. Okay, that can improve if you have gout. Well, gout comes from the buildup of acids that come out of your kidneys. Okay, when they're trying to flush your system. And guess what? Blood sugar affects that. So if you cut the carbs, you may find that your gout goes away. There's even some speculation about rheumatoid arthritis. Okay. Well, I'm telling you things that you're going to say, oh, this guy came in here and he said, just cut out sugar and refined grains from my diet, eat a lot of fat, and you'll never get sick. And nothing bad will ever happen to you. Well, of course I'm not saying that. And I'm not trying to make claims that are unsubstantiated, but I think it's worth everybody taking a look at this. And if you haven't updated your knowledge about diets in the last 20 years or even the last 10 years, okay, yourself to learn more about this, because there's a lot of new information. And I've been seeing articles one after the other saying the fat's good for you, you need good fats in your diet, you know, low carb diets are better for you, etc. I mean, it's out there if you're paying attention. But like I say, I only have a few minutes, and I want to give you a few minutes for any questions before I finish here. So, you've been a very attentive audience. You know, what's wonderful about talking here is you start with 10 people, and by the time you're done, there are 40 people there. It's amazing.